Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today is Monday, which means it's time for an episode of Loadout, the series where you guys, the viewers, get to pick a gun and customization for me to use. The way you do this is you leave a comment down below letting me know what kind of weapon and accessories you'd like me to run with, and I will pick one of the top rated comments for the next episode. Today's top comment comes from Dueler1022. He says Marine Corps Loadout M4, not M4A1, ACOG and heavy barrel, M9, any attachments, small/RPG, any secondary gadgets, and squad flak. Hey LevelCap, I was surprised that there's not one single video with the M4 burst on your channel, so hopefully for your next episode of Loadout, you can give it a try and share your thoughts on it. It's very accurate carbine, medium to long ranges, and I've even taken out snipers with it on semi-auto. I'm USMC 1630 on PlayStation Network, and I'll see you later. I have to say the idea of not actually having a video on the M4 really surprises me. I swear I've done one, like my brain remembers doing one. I can't find it, so maybe I labeled it incorrectly or something, but I've used the M4 a lot on burst fire mode, you know, to get my opinions made about it. Never been one of my favorite weapons just because I've never particularly cared for the burst fire mechanics in Battlefield 3. I think they're extremely limiting in any sort of close quarter engagement, and even at range they're supposed to make a gun more accurate, but I find them harder to use to take down targets at long range than the full auto equivalent. Now this time around, playing with the burst fire M4, I have to say I got a little bit better at compensating for the recoil. I still have my issues with it, but the big issue with burst fire weapons is that you have to continuously compensate for that initial shot recoil. So every first shot you take when firing with a weapon has multiplied recoil. So you have a first shot recoil multiplier. It's usually over twice as much recoil as your follow-up shots. So it's much harder to compensate for that first shot. And when you're burst firing a weapon, you have to compensate for that first shot every 3 shots. Whereas a full auto weapon, you only have to compensate for it once in, say, a 10-round burst or a 5-round burst. So you literally have to do less recoil compensation with a full auto weapon compared to a burst fire weapon. So you might say, well, in that case, what is the point of using a burst fire over a full auto? Is there any point at all? Yes, there is. DICE has actually given the burst fire weapons better aiming down sight accuracy. So the M4A1, the full auto version of this gun, has an aiming down sight accuracy of 0.4. Not particularly accurate, but if you compare it to the normal M4 on burst fire, it has an aiming down sight accuracy of 0.2. This is going to make the weapon much more precise, and the clusters of shots, the groupings of shots, are going to be much more accurate. So that is the benefit. The only problem is you have to learn to control that recoil to even start to take advantage of this improved accuracy. Now, I do actually have a theory, and that is if you could compensate for the recoil perfectly, a lot of people have gotten close to perfect recoil compensation with automatic weapons. I know I'm practically there. If you could get that same level of recoil compensation with the burst fire weapon, you could potentially have a weapon that's much more effective at range than the full auto version. Now, this is something that's going to take a lot more skill, and also to get the same rate of fire with a burst fire weapon, you have to tap fire it at the perfect increments. Otherwise, you're not going to be getting the rate of fire that you could with a full auto weapon. Another thing that's very important for taking down your enemies in the shortest amount of time possible. I know there's people out there that just absolutely love the AN-94, you know, because it's so accurate, and if you can master that recoil in the burst fire, then you have an incredibly powerful weapon on your hands. So it's just one of those things that actually takes a lot more time to get used to, and I feel like you really do have to kind of dedicate yourself to 1 or 2 weapons at that point, because the recoil is something that is probably pretty hard to switch between a full auto weapon and a burst fire weapon and still maintain mastery of the recoil. You know, I think you just kind of have to dedicate yourself to the craft, as I know some people have. Now, as I said before, I'm actually getting better with the recoil compensation for burst fires, and I was enjoying it a bit on this round. You're going to see me get a lot of good kill streaks here. I do a lot of hip fire actually because of the close quarter stuff. Now, the ACOG is something that I think makes it a little bit difficult to use burst fire weapons initially, but it does allow me to really precisely see how far my recoil is being affected by this burst fire weapon. I can see exactly how much my gun is kicking and how much I need to compensate to keep it on target. It's just going to be a slightly different mouse pull compared to using a red dot sight, because your sensitivity on the mouse changes depending on the magnification of your sight. Now I know we're trying to replicate the aesthetics of a real-life loadout here, so that's the point of using the ACOG on here. And I will say the gun looks very cool. It looks like it's straight out of a military film with the ACOG sight on here, as it's one of the most popular sights in the US military. It's just not quite the right matchup for the M4. Now, even though the burstfire M4 is an accurate weapon, it's not that accurate. In fact, most assault rifles have comparable accuracy to the burstfire version of this. So you're not going to be getting this crazy amount of accuracy. In fact, I would say you're not even getting enough accuracy to justify using the ACOG sight. So I really wouldn't go beyond a red dot sight. If you want a hollow sight, like maybe the EOTech, again, if you want to recreate that US military look and feel, the EOTech was pretty much designed for the M4 platform. So you could put that on there if you want a tiny bit more zoom. Otherwise, you're just not going to really need it. You can still have a nice accurate platform and have good accuracy using a red dot sight just fine. Now, of course, the heavy barrel makes a ton of sense with the carbine, with the M4, but it actually makes sense with pretty much any carbine. I've talked about this a lot in the past, but basically, not only does it improve your aiming down sight accuracy, which again is great for a burstfire weapon, you want to get as good of aiming down sight accuracy as possible, but it's also going to increase your bullet velocity exponentially, so you can have an extremely fast bullet shot, which again is going to be very good for long range targeting. Now, the only drawback is that a heavy barrel does increase your recoil, your vertical recoil when using it, so it's going to make compensating for that first shot recoil even more difficult. The only thing is that having medium recoil to high recoil with a burstfire weapon, if you can start to master it with the heavy barrel or without heavy barrel, I think the learning curve is pretty much going to be the same, so you may as well try and learn to master it with the heavy barrel. Now, something really interesting to note is that in Battlefield 4 we're getting a ton of different vertical grips and foregrips and angled foregrips and potato grips, all these different grips that are going to do different things to the way that you play. Now, something that could really help out burstfire weapons in Battlefield 4 and actually make them some serious competitors is the angled foregrips. I think there's going to be a couple, the folding foregrip and the angled foregrip, I believe are going to do the same thing in Battlefield 4, and those are going to greatly reduce your initial shot recoil. So burstfire weapons all of a sudden could become very easy to use with an angled foregrip on there. So that's something to actually try out when we finally get our hands on Battlefield 4. I am predicting right now that they're going to be very effective, like an M4, burstfire M4, angled foregrip, heavy barrel. That could be an amazing weapon in Battlefield 4. So I really can't wait to test that out, because I think burstfire weapons really do need to become a little bit easier to use, because there just isn't enough attracting people to them right now. It's very hard to maintain your high rate of fire with the burstfire weapon. Compensating for the recoil, as I've said, is very hard to do, and you pretty much have to dedicate yourself to one or two weapons to try and master that recoil. So having an attachment that really negates the necessity to have to master that recoil is just going to change things up. And check out this kill. I love blowing up walls and then wasting all these guys. Switch to the M9, take out this last guy there, take out the dude who just got revived. It just felt kind of cool flanking through a wall like that. So overall, I actually do end up doing really well with the M4 this round. You know, it's not to say that it's a great platform, and I feel like if I was up against some really good top tier competitive players, then I would have a real hard time using the M4. Just too many times where I'm shooting at people in the distance and it's just taking another burst, another burst, another burst, and finally they're down, where I feel with full auto I just take one burst and they would be gone. So I know that timing is going to screw me over when I'm up against really good players, but in playing in a casual pub, I was actually able to do quite a bit of damage, and there's the tag hunters there, always going for my tags. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Remember to leave your comments in the video description letting me know what you'd like me to run with for the next episode, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.